back to Student Pilot Journal. This is episode number 38, and today is Saturday, October 29th, 2011. My name is Greg Summers, and this is my instructor, Casey Allen. He has a CFI, a CFII. And a little bit about the podcast. What you're watching is occasionally you'll see some in-cockpit video. You'll see sometimes some lessons. You can go back and look at my old flight training, which I did most of my primary flight training video episodes, and Casey was my instructor for that as well. So that's kind of what we'll do, tips and tricks. Sometimes you'll see me in the car just talking, and I try to leave most of the instruction up to Casey, but occasionally you'll hear some stuff here from me. A couple months ago, Casey went off to training over with American Eagle Airlines. So what I wanted to do was kind of let him kind of recap and see what he went through and what he's been doing the last couple months. We're here out here at Melbourne International, where we keep all our flight club's airplanes. Unfortunately today there's no airplanes available, so we were going to go fly, but it would have been a nice, some decent IFR weather, I guess, and then we could have actually got some good flight footage, but that's not going to happen. So hopefully you can hear this. Casey will talk as loud as he can and without yelling at you. So what have you been up to the last 2 months?
Yeah, so in August I got hired by American Eagle, and the main part of the training was 6 weeks long. It was 4 weeks of ground school and then 2 weeks of simulator training. I'm based in San Juan, Puerto Rico, flying a plane called the ATR 72. It's a twin-engine turboprop that holds 64 passengers. I've been doing a lot of flying around different parts of the country. I did a little bit in Dallas, some in Miami, and then just this last week I went down to my actual base in San Juan. Yeah, so the training, basically we started off with, there's a lot of just regulations for as far as like the airline is concerned. Then probably the longest part of the training was actually the systems portion. So the systems on this plane are pretty complicated. And then after that there was an oral exam, much like a private pilot oral exam that you would take as part of a check ride. And then 2 weeks of simulator training, and for me the simulator training was probably the most fun. It was not really like any training that I've ever done before, because pretty much you get in and you have a sim partner, and I was fortunate enough to have Ian, who's my roommate, as my sim partner. So we would each of us would have a lesson, and then we would swap seats, and then the other person would fly. But basically the whole time you're in the simulator, things are always going wrong. An engine is catching fire or failing, or you're having DC generator failures, or there's always something going wrong. You're never just sitting there flying a normal approach or a cruise flight or anything like that. So the lessons were 2 hours a day, or 2 hours long, and then I would sit and monitor for Ian, for my partner, when he would fly. So we were in the sim for 4 hours a day, but it was really really tiring, just because you were never able to relax. You're always handling some kind of situation. So really intense training.
So what about I've never been in one. I've seen it. I saw pictures. You sent it on. Here's a picture of what it looks like.
Sure.
But how is it? Now that you've flown in the real thing, kind of thing. How does it compare as far as realism? I'm used to flying a little, flight simulator at home. But what is the realism in the simulator?
Yeah. With the simulator that we were using is what's called a level C simulator. It's the second highest level of classification. So it was a little older, and it's a full motion simulator. The cockpit looks exactly like it does in the real plane. The only thing was, I've never actually been in a level D. Ian has, and he says that in the level D the motion is a lot more realistic. In this one, it moves as you're turning, it banks and everything.
Level D. What kind of training would you go for a level D? Where would they have that?
Well, I mean, they had level Ds for other planes. It's just because this is an older airplane, so it's just the simulator isn't quite up to like the latest technology or whatever. So because of that, we had to actually do 2 flights in the plane itself. Whereas normally when you fly for an airline, you do all of your training in the simulator, and then the first flight that you take in the plane is actually with passengers on like a regular flight, which
they just never know that.
Yeah, they never. I mean, sometimes they announce it, but for us, we had to go and we flew the plane at night after it was just parked at the airport with an instructor. So that was actually pretty cool, and I could sit in the back while Ian was flying, and while one of the people were flying, and that was pretty cool sitting in the back, which is like an empty 70-seat plane. So I just got to San Juan this week and did some flying down there. It was really cool, really pretty, and really enjoying. I'm kind of starting to get into the flow of things. You know how like when you start your flight training, when I have a student like run their checklist for the first time, it takes them forever to run the checklist. And that's how it was with me in this plane. It was, it takes me forever to do things, and I'm sure the captain is just really frustrated with me.
What's typical?
Because I'm so slow.
What's typical? I mean, how big is the checklist compared to?
It's funny. The checklist is actually not that big. It's not that much bigger than like a normal like 172 checklist or whatever. And a lot of the things are done in what are called flows. So we use flows sometimes in general aviation too, but in airline flying. So the checklists aren't that much more extensive, really, than even like a 172. But yeah, everything is done in flows, which makes things a lot easier, actually.
What's a flow?
I think a flow is it's a way of let's say we do a before start checklist, and it has master switch on, mixture rich, carb heat cold. It has a number of items on it, right? And you may be going and reaching, okay, mixture, and then you're reaching over to the left side to do the master switch or something. You're kind of going all around. A flow is a way of just completing that checklist in a more, I guess, flowing manner.
Okay.
So in this plane and in most airliners, you've got a lot of switches up above you. Sometimes there's a thing on both sides of you on the panel, and then there's usually a center quadrant between the two pilots. So. You just start in one place, so maybe on the overhead panel, and then just kind of work your way down. So it's a really easy way to complete a checklist from memory, and then of course you go and verify it and actually read it. But it just makes things go faster, basically. One of the hardest parts for me in the later stages of the training is once I'm actually out, flying with passengers and everything. There's a lot of new things to do that we didn't cover in the simulator. In the simulator, we didn't call like our operations, or we didn't simulate like calling the ramp control to get permission to taxi out. The instructor is playing. He's kind of playing ATC, but just for time's sake, they kind of cut a lot of that out. So there's a lot of talking to the flight attendants, or even something like. When we're in flight, making a PA announcement to the passengers.
Is that normally? I guess I do know the captain. Are you in control of that a lot of times, where you're, talking to the passengers, or does it matter who's doing it?
It kind of depends, and usually you just sort of go with what the captain wants to do. Some captains really like making their PA announcement. They have something that they say every time. Yeah, they really enjoy that. Some of them hate doing it, so they'll tell you, go ahead and make it. And I'm not too good at it. I usually just stick with the basics. Yeah, something that I guess I never really realized is there's a captain and a first officer, and in certain phases of flight, each person has their own set of duties and things that they do. But pretty much, once you're in the plane and you're flying, there's a pilot monitoring, and then there's a pilot flying. So the pilot flying is moving the yoke and the power levers. The pilot monitoring is doing everything else. And you switch jobs. Usually each leg you switch. So maybe when we're flying one leg, Greg's the captain. He's also flying. I'm monitoring. And then the next leg, he's monitoring and I'm flying. So you take turns and switch off. And it's actually a lot easier, at least in my opinion, to be the one that's flying the plane. because all you do is move the yoke, follow the flight director, and move the throttles or the power levers. When you're monitoring, you have to call ATC, you have to run the checklist. You're always moving knobs, pushing buttons, and everything. So it's a lot more labor intensive to be the one that's monitoring rather than the person that's flying.
And what's for new guys? What is the flight director? You say you're following the flight director. What is that actually?
So the flight director is a thing that most advanced planes, even like Cirrus has a flight director, or a lot of more like cross-country oriented Cessnas or Pipers will have a flight director. It's a device that's usually laid over the attitude indicator that pretty much just tells you what attitude to fly. So in my plane, it's like a crosshairs. It looks real similar to like a glide slope and a localizer on an ILS. And you put your little plane, you match it up with those crosshairs. So, for example, if I'm flying and ATC says turn left to heading of 090, the captain will reach up and move the heading bug to 090, and that'll tell the flight director to go, and that tells me to start turning left to 090. Okay. So there's not a lot of what's called like raw data flying, which is all of what we did in the 152, where you're just kind of either looking outside or just looking at your big 6 instruments. 99% of the time you're flying on a flight director, so you're just following what it tells you to do. One thing that I found interesting though is that the captains or the crews really go through a lot to try to make the flight very smooth for the passengers. So they change altitudes, they ask for pilot reports from people further along the route or at a different altitude to try to find a smoother ride or something. Whereas like when we fly in small planes, it's just kind of there's not a lot of escaping the turbulence that you can do. Like especially summertime in Florida, you've got cumulus clouds. You know that below those cumulus clouds it's going to be bumpy. So you just kind of accept it. It's going to be hot. It's going to be bumpy, and that's all you can do about it. When we're flying, in the airliner, you're always trying to get the smoothest ride possible, and most of the time it's possible. It's just like when you go fly, hardly ever do you have a really turbulent flight. Something that us in like a 172 would happen to us every day. So that's kind of, I thought that was kind of cool that the passengers are very coddled and they really try to take care of them and make it the nicest possible flight that they can. So I'll tell you about my favorite thing about the actual flying, and then I'll tell you my favorite perk of the job. I would say that my favorite part so far of actually flying of the job itself has just been how scenic things can be. Like the other night we flew from San Juan to an island called Guadeloupe, somewhere in the lower Caribbean or something, and it was really nice. It was a beautiful clear night, and it's just the ocean below us just completely black, and so a ton of stars were out, and so we kind of turned down the lights in the cockpit and looked outside, and I saw a bunch of shooting stars and some satellites, and it was just really peaceful, and so that's kind of cool to see those sort of things. And you're in the air so much that you see things, and always going somewhere. You see a lot of different things that you don't normally see, or that I didn't normally see, like when I was just flying around here flight instructing. And also just the different destinations that we go. The Guadeloupe was it's a French island, and it felt like I was in like a tropical France or something. Everyone spoke French, and all the cars were French, and we had a great French breakfast in the morning. Do
you get like layover time, or you get to like go see things, or
different trips. Usually, during the daytime, a flight it'll land somewhere, and then you'll leave pretty quickly. So you don't have a lot of time to like get out and go explore around. But a lot of the trips have overnights. So you'll get to somewhere at maybe 5 p.m. and then you won't have to fly until maybe 10 or 11 a.m. the next morning. So you do have some so you have some time to get some food and maybe go around and explore. And it really depends on the trip, but so that's probably my favorite part of the actual job of flying and everything. My favorite perk of the job is definitely the free travel. So basically, I can just get on any flight anywhere if there's an open seat or an open seat in the cockpit or the jump seat.